Hi everybody, so today I'm going to be talking about my self-concept as it relates to other parts of my life and how my perceptions have been shaped over the years. I may have been communicating my whole life, but after taking this class since the beginning of this year, I have learned a lot about myself as a communicator and how I can improve on those skills. So I'm going to begin by talking about my self-concept, which is defined as the stable set of perceptions that you hold of yourself. So I'm going to define my self-concept based on 4 different things, which are my social roles, self-esteem, gender, and culture. So from my social roles, I did read in the book that it says research demonstrates that our sense of self is shaped strongly by the people with whom we interact and the context in which we communicate, which can be found on Chapter 3, Section 1D. And my social roles are as a sister, a daughter, a friend, a student, and even a worker in the medical field. So, moving on, my self-esteem, which is basically an evaluation of self-worth. Based on that, I would say that I have pretty high self-esteem. I see a lot of my traits as a more positive thing, and I see them more as a strength rather than a weakness, although I do understand that a lot of your strengths can also be weaknesses depending on the situation and, how they're being used. Next would be gender, and growing up in a mostly male-dominated society, I had to be more assertive and a lot more competitive to keep up with the boys or whatever. And I was taught to value appearances more than brains because of being a female. But luckily, my mom, being the Asian lady that she is, she was like, no, you get straight A's. But, anyways, so then that brings me into my culture, which growing up in a half Portuguese, half Filipino household, the way of speaking to each other and the values were a lot different. In my family, they valued a lot of obedience and had to make good grades, but I was also taught a lot of individualism because my mom wanted me to be able to defend myself and to be able to take care of myself and be an independent person. So I had both individualism and collectivism in my household, which was a very important factor as for my self-concept. So then the next topic will be what has shaped my perceptions over the years, which would be the environment that I grew up in and a lot of the relationships that I had in my life. So this article I read by Lera Boroditsky, she says in it that linguistic processes are pervasive in most fundamental domains of thought, unconsciously shaping us from the nuts and bolts of cognition and perception to our loftiest abstract notions and major life decisions. So she's basically saying that the way that you speak and even the language that you use to talk to other people can unconsciously shape who you are as a person from the inside out. And I got to see that firsthand and experience that from living both in Southern California and also in Southern Louisiana. The culture in Louisiana is a lot different than it is here. The way of thinking, the way of speaking is a lot different. There's a lot more slang. The Cajun accent is very hard to understand, and they have a lot of different sayings, and it's just a lot different, and it shaped a lot of my perceptions because I got to see both sides of the coin. Yeah. Moving on. My social roles growing up in the environment that I was in also shaped my perceptions. So living in Louisiana, I was expected to be a proper lady. I was expected to, you don't show your shoulders, you sit straight, you groom yourself, you have to look very pretty, you have to worry about your appearance and how you look in front of other people, and it was just it was culture shock basically. But I was also raised to be very individualistic and to take charge and stand up for what I believe in, so I clashed a lot with people, but it was just a thing. So the relationships also shaped my perceptions, which a lot of it came from more familial type relationships, mainly my mother. My mother shaped a lot of my perceptions. Living in a very close-knit Asian family, we valued the closeness and being, I guess they're kind of like really touchy. The Filipinos, they're really touchy. I don't, it's a thing. But the cultural differences did affect my perceptions over the years. Also, my friendships. A lot of the people who I was friends with, both here and when I was living in Louisiana, did affect my perceptions because I grew up mostly as like a little tomboy, but being friends with some of these girls, I got to, I guess, appreciate more of like the other side of it, like dressing up and going shopping and whatever. So that did affect my perceptions as I was growing up. So then I'm going to move on to my third point, which is how is my self-concept related to my perceptions? So the different environments that I grew up in affected my social roles and my self-esteem. So living in California, I was encouraged to be more assertive and to be more of an individual, and it didn't really matter too much about my gender. I was just supposed to be a leader, which I was also receiving a lot of support from my mom and my dad to be a leader, basically. While living in Louisiana, I was by society told that I needed to behave a certain way, respect your elders, sir or ma'am, you need to do things this way, you do what you're told, you listen to the man of the house, blah blah blah. And it was a crazy thing. But living here, my household valued leadership for me and being in those kind of roles, whereas living in Louisiana, I was supposed to be a proper lady doing what I was told by the man of the house, and that was just a whole thing. And from this other article that I read, it says feedback that we get from significant others, which includes close family, can lead to positive views of self, which is basically what happened even though I was living in Louisiana and I was told to listen to the men in the house, you should be a proper lady, my mother was telling me to don't listen to that. You be you. Be a strong, independent woman and don't listen to all that. So even though we were living in Louisiana, I was still influenced mainly by my mother, by my family. Also, my gender and my culture affected my perceptions. So friendships with girls developed, and even though I was more of a tomboy who was very competitive, friendships with those girls expanded my views on a lot of things, and just it was very interesting. So then for my fourth point, how will I engage in perception checking to help me become a better communicator in interpersonal communication? So I plan on using perception checking by confirming mutual understanding using perception checking. So I'll do the whole describing the behavior, giving my possible interpretations, and then asking for clarification to confirm that I understood what was communicated, because I feel like that is an important thing to do because I use it so often now. Ever since learning this, I use it all the time, especially with work. It helps a lot. And another thing I can do is to take cultural differences into consideration when I'm communicating. So I can consider whether the amount of talking that someone is doing is due to a cultural difference rather than just disinterest in communicating with me. And also trying to understand that the language that you use when communicating with someone can also affect how the meaning is conveyed to the person that you are speaking to. Because the words in different languages and different cultures can mean different things depending on how they're said. So taking that into consideration when communicating to other people can help me to become a better communicator. And I can also take into consideration lack of eye contact that I could get from someone that I'm communicating with, and not take it to heart really, because it could just be because of a cultural difference and not purposeful avoidance during a conversation. So in conclusion, in this speech, I've gone over how my self-concept and perceptions go hand in hand on making me who I am as a person, and I've also discussed how I can become a better communicator with this information. Thank you all for watching. See you guys next time.